Yeah, so that just happened. Now, what can me crashing my car at my first ever track day teach you about COVID? Stay tuned to find out. What's going on, guys? Now, let's play that one more time. Going up to the corkscrew, I shift down to third, I shift down into second, which generally you don't need to do, you can just stay in third. Turn left, and as I'm going down the corkscrew, I hit the gas a little bit too soon, and I oversteer. And yeah, I was kidding about crashing. I actually managed to save it. This is the in-cabin footage. I was going crazy with the steering wheel, and you know shit is really hitting the fan when you accidentally hit your windshield wipers trying to save a slide or an impending crash. Now, before we dive into the whole serious talk here, let me just say that, oh my God, this was so much fun. Possibly the most fun you can legally have. The reason I love the track day so much is, at the end of the day, it makes me feel like a kid again. You know, when we're kids, we just get like so in awe of the world because there's so much that we just haven't seen before. But as we get older, pattern recognition kind of decreases the intensity of these stimuli such that we're not really as amazed. It's still beautiful to see a sunset or do cool things, but it's not as amazing as when you were a kid. But man, when you're on track day, you can't think of anything else. Your heart is going 160 beats per minute while you're just like sitting there. Man, I felt alive. I felt like a kid again. Anyways, it was epic. Now, I am admittedly somewhat of an adrenaline junkie, and I say that with a large asterisk because I'm a very risk-averse adrenaline junkie. I don't mind taking risks as long as they are calculated and controlled for. So quitting residency seems kind of crazy, but I assessed the risk and made sure that it wasn't too crazy before I pulled the trigger. Same thing with track days. They can be pretty dangerous if you're not doing things properly, and you can hurt yourself, you can damage your car. There's just a lot that can go wrong, but there's ways to limit that downside risk. So how did I limit it for the first ever track day? 3 things. First, when it comes to a track day, you have to decide which track you're going to and which organization you're going to be tracking with. These are not races, okay? Track day is an open track. You gotta push your car as hard as you can. I used to do a lot of autocross earlier. Autocross is fun, but you're in a parking lot, it's very controlled. It's still pushing your car to the limits. You get comfortable with oversteer, understeer. I think that's a big part of what allowed me to not crash going down the corkscrew, but it's a completely different animal. So when you are choosing a track day, you wanna be very careful with the organization you're going with. I chose an organization per the advice of one of my good friends who is a very frequent flyer at these track days, and they're very expensive, like more than twice the price of other track days. And it's worth it because they run a super tight ship and they have so many staff. They have a focus on safety. Their coaching is excellent. It was just a phenomenal experience. I was so impressed. I definitely want to go with them again because it was just so well done. Now, if you go to a more budget organization and do a track day there is a risk because the coaching may not be as good. It's probably gonna be good, but maybe not as good, or there aren't as many people, there isn't as much of an emphasis on safety. And then the crowds that they attract, because they are more budget, tend to be a more rowdy crowd, a younger crowd that apparently a lot of people put themselves and others at risk is what I'm told. Second is getting track day insurance. A lot of people don't get track day insurance. They say, hey, I'm a great driver, nothing's gonna happen. First of all, everyone makes mistakes. Even top Formula 1 racing drivers make mistakes and get into accidents. But also, someone can crash into you, and your car insurance that you drive around on the regular roads is not gonna cover it. So again, I'm making decisions that are going to cap my downside risk. My car is a 2013 Scion FRS named Bianca, and she's not that pricey, she's not that expensive. She's 7 years old, not a very expensive car to replace if anything happened to her, but I would rather pay 150, 200 bucks up front, and you know, most likely nothing's gonna happen. But then if I do get in an accident or my car does get totaled, then I'm not out, you know, several $1,000s. So with these situations, I'm assessing what is the risk profile. For me to go to a more expensive track day, I'll probably have a better, safer experience, lower risk of an accident, better training and coaching. And if I go with track day insurance, then again, I'm capping that downside risk. And then the third thing is preventive car maintenance. So before I went to this track day, I did brake fluid flush, I changed my clutch fluid, my differential fluid, my transmission fluid. I took more preventative measures than some people would deem necessary because I just don't want anything to go wrong with my car. This is my one and only car. I don't have a track car and like a daily driver. I want to take these preventative measures up front that are going to be a few $100s so that it's going to decrease the risk of me having larger complications in the future that'll cost me thousands of dollars, be much more expensive. So again, I'm making decisions that make sense within this risk profile. All right, since a lot of you guys gave me a lot of backlash about my dating video, about still not going to personal things, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a teaser here because risk assessment applies to dating too. It applies to everything in your life. Now, I was hanging out with a lady friend and I raised the point about what was going on. And things were not as straightforward as they usually are, a little bit complicated. So I raised the point about, hey, you know, this is my expectation. This is where I see things going. Are we cool? And she's like, ew, oh my God, that's like so awkward. Why are we talking about this? So I told her, well, if you look at the upside and downside, then it actually makes a lot of sense. Because the upside of us having this explicit conversation right now is that we can avoid misunderstandings, we can avoid a future of complications and hurt, et cetera, et cetera. And the downside, I think there is no downside. You think that the conversation is a little awkward. I'm willing to trade the large potential benefit of avoiding possible issues in the future for the very small price of what you're calling an awkward conversation. And when I explained it to her like that, she said, huh, that makes a lot of sense. I guess it's not so awkward after all. I know. And that brings us to the final point, which is COVID masks. Now, if you see footage of people in Japan, for example, everyone wears a mask, not an issue. Of course I'm gonna wear a mask because it's the right thing to do, it's smart, et cetera, et cetera. But here in America, my freedom. Nah, you can't tell me what to do, what to wear. I do what I want. I don't feel good. No one cares about your feelings. What makes a child different from an adult? A child doesn't understand that their feelings aren't reality. A child doesn't understand that there's morality involved. I've been studying too much of this MCAT content from MEM. It's like all this Erickson stages of development are coming up. But what makes a child different from an adult? Well, let me say actually a well-adjusted, mature adult understands that their feelings are just that, feelings. And they can make decisions and behave in a way that is logical, that makes sense, that is for their own good and the greater good, not just a reaction to their feelings. So again, let's take a look at the upside and the downside. Now, in terms of upside, you're going to reduce the risk of transmission of COVID between you to others and from others to you. And what does that mean? Well, you can prevent deaths for those who are at high risk. I am at higher risk. I am immunosuppressed on Remicade because of Crohn's colitis, which is inflammatory bowel disease. You have other high-risk populations who are also immunosuppressed or immunocompromised, who could be young. Just because I look like a young, healthy guy, people assume that, hey, you're not higher risk. I am actually higher risk. You have people with comorbidities. You have the elderly. You have people who have diabetes, or they're obese, or they have some other lung condition, etc. You're saving their lives. And for you, if you don't get COVID, or if you're reducing your risk of getting COVID, there is a non-zero chance that you can have significant complications. At the very least, you're gonna be miserable, you're gonna have a headache, it's gonna be difficult to breathe, you're gonna be feeling miserable, you're not gonna want COVID, right? In terms of risk, that's still pretty bad. The downside is you wear a mask. The downside is people maybe can't look at your beautiful face. The downside is maybe that it's a little bit harder to breathe. You think it's hard to breathe now with the mask? Try breathing with COVID. So when we approach something as life-changing as COVID, we need to think about how do we interact with others? What kind of approach are we taking? Are we assessing risk adequately? We need to make our decisions based on that. Not being children that just say, hey, my freedom, or hey, I don't like the way it looks or the way it feels. Because at the end of the day, that's not the most important thing. Anyway, guys, I hope you found that video useful. In summary, wear your goddamn mask, and I will see you guys in that next one. Peace.